The Lamborghini pulls up to the valet stand at a restaurant in Beverly Hills. The door swings upward. A young man steps out, dressed in designer clothes, phone already recording. He hands the keys to the valet, walks inside, and 30 minutes later returns to collect his car. The content is captured. The illusion is complete. What the followers will never see is what happens next. The young man drives a Lamborghini not to a mansion in the hills, but to a nondescript lot in the valley where he returns the car to a rental company. The daily rate was $800. His credit card is nearly maxed. He will eat ramen for the next week to afford the footage he just created. This is Los Angeles in the age of social media. A city where the appearance of wealth has become more valuable than wealth itself, where rented cars and borrowed watches and photographed mansions create fortunes for people who own almost nothing, where the line between reality and performance has dissolved so completely that even the performers sometimes forget which side they are on. This is the story of the biggest lie Los Angeles has ever told, and how millions of people around the world came to believe it. To understand the fake wealth culture of Los Angeles, you need to understand what the city has always sold. Since the earliest days of Hollywood, LA has been in the business of manufacturing dreams. The studios created fantasy worlds. The stars embodied impossible. Glamour, the city itself, became a backdrop for aspiration, but there was always a boundary. The fantasy existed on screen. The stars were extraordinary by definition. Ordinary people could admire the dream without expecting to live it. The distance between audience and performer was understood and accepted. Social media erased that boundary. Suddenly, anyone with a phone could broadcast their life. Anyone could cultivate an audience. Anyone could present themselves as wealthy, successful, living the dream. The tools of illusion that once required studio budgets became available to everyone. Los Angeles was perfectly positioned to exploit this shift. The city already had the infrastructure of aspiration, the locations, the cars, the clothes, the aesthetic vocabulary of wealth. What it needed were people willing to assemble these elements into convincing performances. It found them by the thousands. The rental economy for status symbols has become a fully developed industry in Los Angeles. Companies now specialize in providing the props of wealth to people who cannot afford to own them. Exotic car rentals are the most visible example. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, and Rolls-Royces can be rented by the hour or day. The companies that provide them understand exactly who their customers are, not tourists wanting a driving experience. Influencers and aspiring influencers who need content. The pricing reflects this reality. A Lamborghini Huracan might rent for $600 to $1,000 per day. That sounds expensive until you calculate the return. A single Instagram post featuring the car might generate thousands of likes, attract new followers, and unlock sponsorship opportunities worth far more than the rental fee. Some rental companies offer packages specifically designed for content creation. They will deliver the car to a photogenic location, wait while you shoot, and retrieve it when you are done. The transaction is purely about imagery. The car is not transportation. It is a prop. The mansion rental phenomenon operates on similar principles, but at larger scale. Throughout the hills of Los Angeles, luxury homes sit available for hourly or daily rental, marketed explicitly to content creators. These properties feature the aesthetic markers of extreme wealth: infinity pools overlooking the city, open floor plans with walls of glass, designer furniture, professional lighting, everything needed to create the impression that you live a life of impossible luxury. The rates vary dramatically. A few $100s might get you a few hours in a moderately impressive home. The most spectacular properties command thousands per day. Either way, the math can work for creators with sufficient followings. What these rentals enable is the simulation of a lifestyle. The creator arrives, shoots content in various rooms and locations, and leaves. The content is then parceled out over days or weeks, creating the sustained impression of residence. Followers see bedroom shots, kitchen videos, pool content, all from a place the creator visited for an afternoon. The deception is rarely explicit. Creators seldom claim to own these properties. They simply fail to mention they do not. The implication is allowed to stand. The audience assumes the illusion holds. I spent time with several people who participate in this economy. Their stories reveal both the mechanics and psychology of performed wealth. Marcus moved to Los Angeles from Ohio 3 years ago with dreams of becoming He had a few thousand Instagram followers and no money. Today he has nearly 1 million followers and, by his own admission, still no money. His content shows him stepping out of exotic cars, lounging by infinity pools, dining at exclusive restaurants. His followers believe he has made it. The reality is more complicated. Every piece of content requires investment. The car rentals, the location fees, the designer clothes, some purchased, many borrowed or rented through services that exist for exactly this purpose. Marcus estimates he spends $3,000 to $4,000 monthly creating the illusion of wealth. His income comes from sponsorships and affiliate deals, but it barely covers his costs. He lives in a small apartment in Koreatown with 2 roommates. His actual lifestyle bears no resemblance to his portrayed lifestyle. The gap between them grows harder to manage every month, but he cannot stop. His following was built on the illusion. Revealing the reality would destroy everything he has created. He is trapped in a performance he cannot afford to continue or abandon. The psychology of this phenomenon extends far beyond the creators themselves. The audiences who consume this content are equally important and equally implicated in the lie. Researchers who study social media have documented the effects of exposure to wealth-focused content. Viewers experience decreased life satisfaction. They develop distorted perceptions of how others live. They feel pressured to demonstrate their own success through consumption they cannot afford. This is not accidental. The content is designed to trigger these responses. Envy drives engagement. Aspiration drives following. The emotional manipulation is the business model. Young people are particularly vulnerable. Growing up with social media has normalized the constant display of lifestyle. Many genuinely believe that their peers are living the lives they see portrayed. They do not understand that they are watching carefully constructed performances. The result is a generation carrying impossible expectations. They believe wealth and luxury are normal, achievable, almost expected. When their own lives fail to match what they see online, they feel like failures. The comparison is rigged, but they do not know enough to reject it. The geographic specificity of Los Angeles matters enormously to this phenomenon. The city provides a backdrop that makes performed wealth more convincing than it could be anywhere else. The locations are real. The Beverly Hills Hotel exists. Rodeo Drive exists. The mansions in the hills exist. When a creator films in front of these locations, they are borrowing authenticity from genuinely wealthy environments. The culture is also real, in a sense. Los Angeles does contain enormous wealth. Celebrities and executives and entrepreneurs do drive exotic cars and live in massive homes. The lifestyle being performed is not entirely fictional. It is just not the creator's lifestyle. This creates a kind of camouflage. The fake wealth blends with the real wealth. The rented Lamborghini parks next to owned Lamborghinis. The creator at the mansion party stands next to people who actually live in mansions. The boundaries become impossible to distinguish from the outside. Other cities could not sustain this phenomenon at the same scale. New York has wealth, but not the same car culture or outdoor lifestyle. Miami has flash, but not the same entertainment industry connections. Los Angeles uniquely combines the elements needed for performed wealth to flourish. The businesses that cater to performed wealth have become sophisticated and diverse. Beyond car and mansion rentals, an entire ecosystem has emerged. Designer clothing rental services allow creators to wear outfits worth thousands without purchasing them. The clothes are worn for a shoot, 10 return. The same dress might appear on dozens of different accounts, each presenting it as their own. Jewelry rental operates similarly. Watches, necklaces, rings that would cost tens of thousands to purchase can be rented for a fraction of that. The creator wears them for content, returns them, and the audience assumes ownership. Private jet companies have recognized the opportunity. Some offer stationary photo packages. For a few $100s, you can board a grounded jet, take photos and video, and create the impression of private aviation. You never leave the tarmac, but your content suggests otherwise. Restaurant reservations have become their own economy. Certain establishments are known for their Instagram appeal. Getting a table at these locations is valuable not for the food, but for the content opportunity. Services exist that specialize in securing these reservations for creators who would otherwise be unable to access them. The financial reality behind performed wealth is often precarious. Many creators operate in a state of constant financial stress, hidden behind the facade of luxury. Credit card debt is endemic. The props of wealth must be paid for somehow. When income does not cover expenses, credit bridges the gap. The interest accumulates. The debt grows. The performance continues, because stopping would mean admitting failure. Some creators have spoken publicly about the trap they find themselves in. The admission itself is content, a narrative of redemption that generates engagement. But even these revelations often minimize the severity of the situation. The math of influencer economics is brutal. Only a tiny fraction of creators earn substantial income. The vast majority make little or nothing. But the visible success stories create the impression that wealth is attainable, encouraging more people to attempt the same path. Los Angeles is filled with aspiring influencers, investing everything in performances they cannot sustain. They max out credit cards for a single video. They take on debt to maintain illusions. They sacrifice financial stability for the chance of visibility. Most will fail. The audience's attention is finite. The algorithms are unforgiving. The competition intensifies constantly. For every creator who breaks through, thousands exhaust their resources and disappear. The real estate market in Los Angeles has been distorted by the content economy in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Properties that photograph well command premiums unrelated to their practical value. A home with the right aesthetic, the right views, the right pool, may be worth more as a content location than as a residence. Some property owners have recognized this and shifted their approach. Rather than seeking long-term tenants or buyers, they market their homes for content use. The income from hourly rentals can exceed what traditional rental would provide. This has consequences for housing availability. Properties that might otherwise be homes become production facilities. The housing shortage that plagues Los Angeles is not caused primarily by this phenomenon, but it is worsened by it. The aesthetic preferences of content creators also influence development. New construction increasingly optimizes for photographability. Clean lines, white walls, glass and steel. The visual vocabulary of Instagram has become the design language of Los Angeles architecture. The luxury car market tells a similar story. Exotic car dealerships in Los Angeles have long understood that many purchases are driven by image rather than enthusiasm. Some buyers make irrational financial decisions to obtain cars they cannot afford. They stretch budgets, take on debt, sacrifice other priorities. The car is not transportation. It is a statement, a prop in the performance of their life. The rental market exists partly because ownership is impossible for most, but the renters are not content to simply rent. They position the rentals as owned. They create the impression of possession. The car becomes identity. Used exotic prices in Los Angeles are affected by this dynamic. The demand for content props keeps values higher than mechanical condition alone would justify. A car that has been rented by hundreds of influencers maintains value because the demand for that specific illusion remains strong. The fashion industry has adapted aggressively to the content economy. Brands understand that visibility on the right accounts drives sales more effectively than traditional advertising. This has created a complex exchange between brands and creators. Some creators receive products free in exchange for posts. Others are paid directly. Still others purchase or rent items themselves, hoping the content will attract brand attention. The result is a blurring of genuine preference and paid promotion. When a creator shows off a designer bag, is it because they love it, because they were paid to show it, or because they rented it to appear wealthy? The audience often cannot tell. Disclosure requirements exist, but are inconsistently enforced. Creators are supposed to identify paid partnerships. Many do not, or do so in ways designed to minimize visibility. The line between personal content and advertising has been deliberately obscured. Fast fashion brands have exploited this environment. They produce inexpensive items that mimic luxury aesthetics, specifically targeting creators who want the look without the cost. The clothes fall apart after a few wears, but that does not matter. They only need to last long enough for the photo. The psychological toll on creators who perform wealth is substantial, but rarely discussed. The constant management of a false identity creates cognitive strain. Every piece of content must be consistent with the established fiction. Creators must remember what they have claimed, implied, and shown. They must avoid contradictions that might expose the performance. They must maintain the illusion across platforms and over time. The fear of exposure is constant. A follower might recognize a rented location. A commoner might note that the same car appears on multiple accounts. A former friend might reveal the truth. The anxiety never fully subsides. Some creators describe a loss of identity. They have performed wealth for so long that they no longer know who they actually are. The character they created has consumed the person they were. The performance has become indistinguishable from self. Relationships suffer. Friends and romantic partners must be incorporated into the fiction or excluded from content. The pressure to maintain appearances extends into every area of life. Authenticity becomes impossible. The broader cultural effects of performed wealth are difficult to measure, but impossible to ignore. Los Angeles has always influenced global culture. The standards of aspiration established here spread worldwide. Young people in cities far from Los Angeles absorb these images and internalize their messages. They come to believe that wealth is normal, that luxury is expected, that their own ordinary lives represent failure. The comparison corrupts their relationship with their own reality. The content does not come with disclaimers. It does not explain that the car was rented, the house was borrowed, the lifestyle is fiction. It presents performance as reality and allows audiences to draw false conclusions. This may be the deepest harm of LA's fake wealth culture. Not the financial damage to creators who overextend themselves, not the housing market distortions, or the traffic from photo shoots, but the corruption of aspiration itself, the transformation of reasonable dreams into impossible standards, the teaching of an entire generation that appearance matters more than substance. There are those who defend performed wealth as simply a modern form of entertainment. The creators are performers. The content is obviously staged. The audience understands the game and enjoys it anyway. This defense has some merit. Sophisticated viewers do recognize the performance. They appreciate the aesthetic without believing the reality. They consume the content as fantasy, not documentary. But the defense underestimates how many viewers lack this sophistication. Young people especially often cannot distinguish performance from reality. They believe what they see. They model their expectations on fiction presented as fact. The defense also ignores the effects on creators themselves. Even if audiences understand the game, the creators often do not. They become trapped in performances they cannot sustain. They sacrifice their financial and psychological well-being for an illusion, and the defense cannot address the systemic effects. When performed wealth becomes the dominant cultural aesthetic, when reality itself is judged against fictional standards, something important is lost. The ability to appreciate ordinary life. The connection between effort and reward. The understanding that most wealth is built slowly, invisibly, without Instagram documentation. What would it take to change this culture? The question assumes change is possible, which is not certain. Platform policies could help. If Instagram and TikTok required clear disclosure of rented props and borrowed locations, the illusions would be harder to maintain. If algorithms deprioritize content that failed to disclose, creators would face incentives to be honest. But platforms benefit from the current system. Engagement drives advertising revenue. Performed wealth drives engagement. The platforms have little reason to undermine a dynamic that profits them. Education might help. Teaching media literacy, helping young people understand that social media content is constructed, might reduce its psychological impact. But education struggles to compete with the constant stream of aspirational imagery. Cultural shifts might emerge organically. There are signs that some audiences are tiring of performed wealth. Authenticity has become its own aesthetic category. Some creators have built followings specifically by rejecting the luxury performance. But these countertrends remain small. The dominant culture continues. The performances continue. The lies continue. The sunset casts golden light across Mulholland Drive. A young woman stands beside a white Lamborghini, filming herself with a city view behind her. The image is perfect. The caption will say something about blessed life, dream living, manifest your reality. In 2 hours, she will return the car. Tomorrow, she will work her job at a retail store, earning money to fund the next rental. Her apartment is small, her bank account is smaller, but her profile shows a life of luxury, and thousands of people believe it. This is Los Angeles in the 21st century, a city where the performance of wealth has become more important than wealth itself, where the symbols of success can be rented by the hour, where an entire generation has learned to value